Good morning, y'all. Welcome to another video on Ludico Arms channel. Today we're going to talk about the M203 grenade launcher. We'll talk a little bit about the history of it, combat use, my personal experience with it, and then we'll take a closer look at my clone here that I built. So the M203 is a 40mm grenade launcher, low pressure grenades. They're not the same as the grenades for the Mark 19, which are high pressure. You can't unlink the ammo for the Mark 19 and use it in the M203. So you need to know that right off the bat. The 203 was developed as a replacement for the M79, which was the standalone 40mm grenade launcher used in Vietnam. It's an old break action wood stocked single shot grenade launcher. Probably seen it in war movies. The reason they developed it is because the grenadiers in Vietnam carried the M79 and they carried a pistol 45. So they basically if the grenade launcher wasn't the right weapon for the job at the time, they were basically stuck with a pistol. So the Army wanted something that would put another rifle into the combat team. So they developed this M203. I believe AAI is the company that developed it. A whole bunch of different companies have made them for the military over the years, including AAI, Colt, Lewis Machine and Tool, or LMT. Whole bunch of different ones. The one I carried in Iraq was a LMT. So the rifle plus the launcher loaded weighs around 11 pounds. It depends on which, if it's mounted on an M4, obviously it's going to be lighter than a M16A2. I carried it on an M16A2. And effective range, if you're using it as an area effect like a mortar, about 350 meters. Point shoots about, 160 meters, about a football field and a half. Point shoots the only way I ever used it in combat. I never really had a situation where I needed to lob grenades out farther than point shooting. Combat load is it's kind of funny because you carry a full combat load for the rifle, which is 7 magazines, 6 in your pouches and 1 in the rifle, and then your grenade load. Now I was issued about 40 grenades, but what you carried on you was subject to the person. I was issued a grenadier's vest, which holds 22 or so grenades in little pouches all over the front of it. And then the pistol belt fits in the bottom of it, and I had my 2 old school ammo pouches on the pistol belt for my rifle ammo. But I never used the pouches on the grenade vest because it just felt like it was a suicide vest. I didn't really feel comfortable walking around with 22 HEDP grenades strapped on my chest. So what I generally did was I carried 1 in the chamber, and I carried 2 in each one of my cargo pockets on my pants, and a couple were loose on the dashboard of the truck, and the rest were in the ammo cans in the truck. Readily available, but I didn't feel the need to carry them around with me. In all honesty, most of our firefights were from the truck, so I was a wrecker driver, so I wasn't out on patrol or anything like that. Well, HEDP grenades, the M433s, were they're high explosive dual purpose They're kind of like, they'll penetrate a little bit of armor, but they're more anti-personnel, launch them through a window, blow up a room kind of deals. So yeah, that's what I carried. It's a funny thing because when we went to Iraq, I was a staff sergeant in E6. I was the battalion recovery NCO, and my issue weapon was an M4 carbine and an M9 Beretta pistol. And we were at Fort Stewart mobilizing, getting ready to go to Iraq, and we were loading a couple of trucks to carry stuff that we weren't going to take with us to Iraq back to the armory. And in that stuff were all the empty weapons racks, since we had issued the weapons. And in one of those racks was an M203 mounted on an M16A2, old gun, burst fire, not full auto. And I got with the supply sergeant, and I was like, how about you take this M4 back and give me that M203, because when I was on active duty back in the early 90s, I carried an M203. I've qualified on it, and I would much rather have the firepower of the M203 than the M4, even though the M4 is a lot easier to carry around. And so I became once again a grenadier, which was fine with me because none of my wreckers had any heavy weapons other than some AT-4s and frag grenades, so it was a good thing. When we got to Kuwait and we were waiting for the war to kick off, or the invasion, we were attached to the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. I was in the 122nd Combat Engineer Battalion. Hold on. South Carolina National Guard. And so we went and we were issued our ammo. And they gave me 2 50 caliber ammo cans full of grenades. But the problem was, all of the grenades they gave me were either smoke or star shell clusters or illumination rounds. No HEDP. So I went and found one of the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment's grenadiers, and he had the opposite problem. They issued him 2 50 caliber ammo cans full of HEDP and no signal or smoke. So we basically horse traded, and both ended up with a good mix of HEDP. So I had HEDP, I had red and green smoke, which are marking rounds, not smoke like to hide your movements. I had red and green star shell clusters, and also parachute illumination rounds. And that's what I was issued. Never really had a use for the parachute rounds other than we used them on New Year's Eve. We fired pretty much all of them on New Year's Eve. But that's another story. Yep, that's trying to think. Is there anything else interesting to tell? Oh, so funny story. These rounds are spin armed, so the HEDP round has to travel 50 to 80 feet before it arms. So from 0 to 50 feet, you're basically just firing a big slow slug. Very similar to the Coke machine on, if you've ever seen the movie Maximum Overdrive, the Coke machine scene. I'll stick it in right here. You'll see what I'm talking about.
I'm buying.
Hey, so you guys gonna help me pick this stuff up or what? Uh-oh, no sodas.
Huh? Oh!
yeah, you've got to make sure your target is 50 feet or more away. And of course, you're really better off with 100 feet, because you don't want to, unless you're shooting from cover, you don't want to be setting a grenade off 50 feet away from you. So that's pretty much all I can think of to discuss. I'll throw in a couple of pictures of me carrying this in Iraq, and we'll move over to the other bench and take a look at this 203 that I have. Alright, so this is mine. I built this. It is a clone of the weapon I carried in Iraq. So this was my companion 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the entire time we were in combat. It was an M16A2. Now this is a clone. It's just a semi-automatic. It doesn't have the burst function because I don't like dealing with extra government BS. But other than that, it's pretty much the same. It's got the M16A2 upper long 20-inch barrel, yada yada yada. But y'all are here for the grenade launcher. So this is a 37mm launcher. Now the M203 that the military uses is a 40mm, and it's a rifled bore. And you can buy one of those as a civilian, but you've got to deal with the $200 tax and registering it as a destructive device and dealing with more government than I want to deal with. I try to keep my dealings with the government as little as possible. So I opted for the 37mm launcher, which is smoothbore. It's basically a flare gun, is what they call it. So it's a launcher 37mm M203 FL flare launcher. But this is made by LMT, Lewis Machine and Tool, who is a government provider of M203s. This is exactly like the M203 I carried in combat, with the exception of it being a 37mm smoothbore instead of a 40mm rifle. Other than that, it works the same. All of this part of it is the same. So let's take a look. On the 203, you've got, let me get this camera set up right here so we can do this. Okay, so the M203, you've got a couple of controls. You've got your barrel latch right here. When you depress that, it releases the barrel and you can open it. You've got an extractor right here, and that's your firing pin, or your ejector, I'm sorry. So you got a trigger right here, and then you've also got a safety, which it has to be cocked in order to engage the safety. Y'all excuse me, it's a little hard to film right here. So that's your safety. Flip that up, it blocks the trigger and also keeps the trigger from dropping the firing pin. To load it, it's pretty simple. Let me grab a grenade here. So for the 37mm, you can buy grenades that are already made, or you can make them yourself. So what I've got are these aluminum shell casings. They're reusable. You use a shotgun primer for them. And you can basically make, this is a big firecracker. I also have ones that are star shell clusters. So I got them marked with a star. And basically you open the breech, drop your grenade in, close the breech, fire it, then open the breech. Now I have adjusted my extractor to not pull the round out because I don't want my reusable aluminum casings dropping on the ground and getting dented, because these things are expensive. But normally the extractor would pull the round loose, the ejector here would push it, and it'd drop down on the ground, just like a shotgun. But because these are expensive and I don't want them damaged, I have bent my extractor down to keep that from happening. And that's it. It's very, very simple weapon to use. Now, as far as sights, they have a leaf sight on top of the handguard, which would be used in conjunction with your front sight post. And then there's also a quadrant sight which mounts on the handguard. And you'll notice that I don't have the quadrant sight, and I never carried it in combat, and I never used it. I never used this sight either. Once you've used this a couple of times, you'll figure out that for most of your combat distances, the rifle sights are pretty close, and if you aim up just a hair, you'll be right on the money. At least that was my experience. So, one other thing with the M203, you have normally your M16, your front sling swivel would be in this hole right here. But when you use the grenade launcher, that's obviously not going to work. So they have this extra that fits on the rifle. So you got to take the front sight off and then put that on there. And that's your sling swivel that goes with the M203. And then obviously you have the M203 handguard, which is different. So the M203 is for the M4 carbine, which you see a lot nowadays because nobody uses this M16A2 hardly anymore. They mount differently. This part's all the same. They've got a Picatinny rail mount to mount on the M4 because the M4s have Picatinny rails, but the launcher itself is basically the same. And it's my understanding that they're phasing these out now, and they've got a new, like, I think it's an M302 or something like that. There's a new design. It's got a couple of newer features, but I don't know anything about it because I carried this baby in combat, not that. So I think that's about it. That is the M203, and if you got any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. And appreciate y'all watching and liking the video and subscribing if you want to. Everything like that helps the channel out, because the more subscribers you have, the closer I'll get to actually making a penny. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to help people. So appreciate y'all watching, and y'all have a good one.